You stole my gold bangle. Where is my gold?
You cannot beat up an old man like that, madam. If your gold is missing, call the police to handle it, ma.
Madam, please. She is just a child. Don't punish her because of me.
Then what? Shut up, old fool! What the?
Hey there. Pour a cup of tea, get comfy, and let your heart listen. The story's about to start. Welcome to Tales Vibe, where laughter and lessons flow together. If you love a good story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more tales every week, and please tell us where you're watching from in the comments. We'd love to know where our story family is tuning in from. The slap never landed. It hung in the air, frozen, because a hand had grabbed Mrs. Maduka's wrist. It was not a gentle hold. It was firm, like iron. In the large living room, everyone stopped breathing. The silence was heavy. Mrs. Maduka, the mistress of the house, stood tall in her expensive lace gown. She looked like a queen who had never been told no in her entire life. Her eyes were wide with shock. Her hand was raised high, ready to strike, and right below it, kneeling on the tiled floor, was Baba Tund. Baba Tund was the oldest staff member in the compound. He had been the gateman since before Mrs. Maduka even married Chief. Now his cap was on the floor, his white hair was messy, and he was shaking like a small child. Tears ran down his wrinkled face. "You want to steal inside my house?" Mrs. Maduka screamed, her voice echoing off the walls. "After all the food you eat here? You are a thief." "I didn't take it, madam," Baba Tund cried, his voice shaking. "I swear with my life, I didn't see the gold bangle." "Shut up," Mrs. Maduka roared. "You think your old age will save you? I will teach you a lesson." She pulled her hand back to strike him again, harder this time. The other maids standing by the door covered their mouths. The driver looked away, afraid to intervene. But just as Mrs. Maduka's hand came down, someone moved. It was Adanna. She was the new maid, only 3 days on the job. She was young, barely 20, wearing a simple house dress that was slightly faded. She moved quickly, stepping out from the line of terrified workers. Before Mrs. Maduka's palm could touch Baba Tund's face, Adanna reached up and caught Mrs. Maduka's wrist. The sound of the grip was soft, but the impact was loud. Mrs. Maduka gasped. She stared at her hand, then she stared at Adanna. She could not believe it. A maid touching her? A maid stopping her? What are you doing?" Mrs. Maduka whispered, her voice trembling with rage. "Remove your hand from my body." Adanna did not let go. She did not look down. She looked straight into Mrs. Maduka's furious eyes. Adanna's face was calm, but her eyes were serious. "Madam, please," Adanna said quietly. "Don't hit him." Mrs. Maduka tried to yank her hand away, but Adanna held on. "Are you mad?" Mrs. Maduka hissed. "You, a nobody, telling me what to do in my husband's house?" "I am not telling you what to do, Ma," Adanna replied respectfully but firmly. "I am begging you. He is an elder. If he stole something, call the police. Let them handle it. But don't slap an old man like this. It is not right." Mrs. Maduka laughed, a cold, bitter sound. "So you are the defender of thieves now? You want to be a hero?" "No, Ma," Adanna said, finally releasing her wrist. "I just want justice." Mrs. Maduka rubbed her wrist, her eyes dark with a promise of punishment. "Justice? You will see justice today. Since you want to save him, you will suffer with him." Mrs. Maduka did not wait for an answer. She snapped her fingers loudly, the sound cracking like a whip. "Security!" she screamed. "Come and take this animal out of my sight." 2 uniformed guards rushed in from the hallway. They hesitated for a second, looking at Adanna, who stood calm and still, then at their furious madam. Fear one. They grabbed Adanna by her arms, pulling her back roughly. "Madam, please," Baba Tund wailed from the floor, clutching his cap. "She is just a child. Don't punish her because of me." "Shut up, old fool," Mrs. Maduka shouted. She turned to the head maid. "Beezy, Go and bring the cane. Since this girl wants to use her hands to hold me, I will use my hand to teach her respect. Beezy, the personal assistant who always followed Mrs. Maduka like a shadow, nodded quickly. Yes, madam. She turned to run, but she stopped abruptly. Standing in the doorway was Chief Maduka. No one had heard his car enter the compound. He stood there in a dark senator suit, holding his briefcase. His face was not smiling. He looked at the guards holding Adanna. He looked at his wife breathing hard, and finally, he looked at the old man crying on the floor. What is happening here? His voice was deep and low, but it carried power. The room froze. The guards quickly let go of Adanna's arms and stepped back, bowing their heads. Good afternoon, sir. Mrs. Maduka's face changed instantly. The anger disappeared, replaced by a sweet, fake smile. She walked towards him quickly. Honey, you are home early. I was just handling a small discipline issue. This new girl. Imagine, she wanted to beat me. Chief Maduka frowned. Beat you? A maid. He looked at Adanna. She did not look like a fighter. She looked like a girl who was tired but not afraid. It is true, honey, Mrs. Maduka continued, pointing a manicured finger at Babatund. That old man stole my gold bangle. And when I wanted to question him, this girl grabbed my hand. Can you imagine? In my own house. Chief Maduka looked at Adanna. Is this true? You grabbed my wife. Adanna stepped forward. Her legs were shaking a little, but her voice was clear. Good afternoon, sir. I held her hand because she wanted to slap an elder. Babatund did not steal anything. He did. Mrs. Maduka snapped. The bangle is missing. It is not missing, sir, Adanna said, looking straight at Chief. It was planted. The word hung in the air. Chief Maduka's eyes narrowed. Planted? What do you mean? She is lying, Mrs. Maduka shouted, panic flashing in her eyes. Don't listen to her. Adanna ignored the shout. She raised her hand and pointed a finger directly at Beezy, who was trying to hide behind the sofa. I saw everything, sir, Adanna said. I was cleaning the glass door. I saw Auntie Beezy holding the gold bangle. She looked around to see if anyone was watching, and then she slipped it into Babatund's pocket while he was sweeping. Beezy's eyes widened in terror. Me? Jesus. I didn't do it. She is lying against me. Chief Maduka looked at Beezy, then at Babatund's pocket. The room was silent as a graveyard. Search him, Chief Maduka ordered quietly. One of the security guards stepped forward. Babatund raised his hands, shaking, tears still flowing down his cheeks. The guard reached into the deep pocket of the old man's oversized trouser. He pulled his hand out. The room went quiet. In his palm sat the heavy gold bangle, shining under the ceiling lights. Ha! Mrs. Maduka shouted, clapping her hands together. You see? You see. I told you he is a thief. This girl is just covering for him. Babatund collapsed to his knees, burying his face in his hands. I didn't know it was there. Oga, I swear. My hands are clean. Chief Maduka did not look at his wife. He did not look at the bangle. He kept his eyes fixed on Beezy. The personal assistant was sweating, even though the air conditioner was humming. She was wiping her hands nervously on her skirt, her eyes darting between the floor and the door. Beezy, Chief Maduka called. His voice was too calm. Sa? She squeaked. Adanna said she saw you put it there, Chief said slowly, walking towards her. Look at me. Did you put my wife's jewelry in this man's pocket? No, sir. I. Beezy glanced at Mrs. Maduka. Mrs. Maduka's eyes were wide, signaling her to keep quiet, a silent threat written on her face. If you lie to me, Chief said, his voice dropping an octave, I will hand you over to the police station immediately. They will get the truth out of you in a way you will not like. Is that what you want? Beezy broke. She burst into tears and fell to the floor, grasping the hem of Chief's trousers. Please, sir, don't arrest me. It was not my mind. I beg you. Who sent you? Chief demanded. It was Madam. Beezy wailed, pointing a shaking finger at Mrs. Maduka. She said the staff are getting too comfortable. She said we needed to make an example of someone so everybody will fear her again. I had no choice, sir. Chief Maduka turned slowly to his wife. Mrs. Maduka's face was hard, like stone. She did not look ashamed. She looked angry that she had been caught. Ivy, Chief said, calling her name with heavy disappointment. You framed an innocent man just to make people fear you? Is this how you run my house? Mrs. Maduka hissed, smoothing her dress. You are never around, Maduka. You don't know what it takes to manage these people. They are lazy. They need a strong hand. She pointed a sharp, manicured finger at Adanna. And that girl is a witch. She is the cause of all this trouble. I want her out of my house now. She is fired. She is not going anywhere, Chief Maduka said firmly. Mrs. Maduka gasped, clutching her chest. What? You are choosing a maid over your wife. I am choosing the truth, Chief replied. She spoke up when everyone else was lying. Until I understand everything happening in this house, Adanna remains here. And if anyone touches her, they will answer to me. Mrs. Maduka glared at Adanna with pure hatred. Fine, she whispered, her voice like poison. Let her stay. But she will regret the day she crossed me. Chief ignored her threat and ordered the guards to help Baba Tund up. But Adanna felt a cold chill. She knew the war had just begun. The living room cleared quickly, like water draining from a sink. Chief Maduka went upstairs to his study, shaking his head. Beezy ran to the kitchen, sniffing and wiping her nose. Baba Tund was helped to the boys' quarters, BQ, by the driver. Adanna was left alone in the hallway. She picked up the broom Baba Tund had dropped. She wanted to finish her work and disappear into her room, but as she turned towards the kitchen, a shadow blocked her path. It was Mrs. Maduka. The woman was no longer shouting. She was calm, which was more terrifying. She stood close to Adanna, smelling of expensive perfume and wickedness. You think you have won, Mrs. Maduka said softly. Her voice was low so no one else could hear. Because my husband played hero today? He is a businessman, Adanna. He travels. Next week he will be in London or Dubai. And when he leaves, it will be just you and me in this house. Adanna gripped the broom handle tighter. I am just here to work, madam. I don't want trouble. Mrs. Maduka laughed, a dry, humorless sound. You found trouble the moment you touched my hand. You think you are brave? I have broken people stronger than you. By the time I am done with you, you will wish you were never born. She leaned closer, her eyes cold. If you are wise, pack your bags and run away tonight. If you wait for me to act, you won't like the ending. Mrs. Maduka turned and walked up the stairs, her heels clicking loudly on the marble tiles. Adanna stood there for a long time, her heart beating fast against her ribs. That night, the BQ was quiet. Usually, the staff would be outside talking or listening to the radio, but tonight, everyone stayed in their rooms. Fear had silenced the compound. Adanna lay on her small mattress, staring at the ceiling. She could not sleep. Every sound made her jump. Suddenly, she heard a soft scratching noise at her door. Then, a piece of folded paper slid underneath it. Adanna sat up quickly. She waited, listening for footsteps, but heard nothing. She walked to the door and picked up the paper. Her hands were shaking. She unfolded it near the small window where the security light shone through. The handwriting was scribbled and hurried. It read, "Leave tonight. If you stay, you will regret it. She does not forgive." Adanna crushed the paper in her hand. She looked at her small bag in the corner. It would be easy to pack. She could leave now, jump a bus, and go back to the village. She would be safe. But then she remembered Baba Tund's tears. She remembered how Beezy had been forced to lie. If she left, Mrs. Maduka would just find another victim. Adanna smoothed the paper out and hid it under her pillow. She lay back down and closed her eyes. "I will not run," she whispered to the empty room. "God is my strength." The morning sun rose, but the house felt cold. Adanna swept the hallway with care, keeping her eyes low. Every time a door opened, she flinched. expecting Mrs. Maduka. But it was the chief who called for her. "Adanna, come to my study," he said from the top of the stairs. Adanna dropped her broom and wiped her hands on her apron. "Yes, sir." She walked up the stairs, her heart beating fast. Had Mrs. Maduka convinced him to fire her overnight? Had he changed his mind? She entered the study. It was a large room filled with books and smelled of old paper and leather. Chief Maduka sat behind a massive mahogany desk. "Sit down," he said, pointing to a chair. Adanna sat on the edge of the seat, her hands folded in her lap. Chief Maduka studied her face for a long time. He looked like a man trying to solve a puzzle. "You have been here for only 4 days," he said slowly. "You don't know Baba Tund well. You don't know me. You certainly don't know my wife's temper." He leaned forward. "Why did you do it? Why did you grab her hand? Most maids would have looked away to save their own job. Why did you throw yourself into fire for an old man?" Adanna looked down at her hands. They were rough from years of work. "I needed the job, sir. I really do. But I could not watch him suffer for nothing." "Is that all?" Chief asked. "Just kindness?" "No, sir," Adanna whispered. She looked up, and her eyes were wet. "It is because of my father." Chief sat back. "Your father?" "Yes, sir." Adanna began, her voice steadying. "My father was a driver. He was a good man. He drove for a big man in Ikoyi for 10 years. He never stole even 1 kobo. But one day, the big man said his envelope of dollars was missing from the back seat." Adanna swallowed hard. "My father swore he didn't take it. He begged. But the big man didn't listen. He called the police. They took my father to the station. They beat him, sir. They beat him until he could not walk." Chief Maduka's face softened. His eyes filled with pity. 2 days later, Adanna continued, the big man found the envelope. It had slid under the car mat. He didn't even apologize. He just told the police to release my father. But it was too late. My father came home broken. He was coughing blood. He died a week later. Not just from the beating, but from the shame. He died because nobody spoke for him. A tear rolled down her cheek. I stood at his grave and I promised God. I said, if I ever see an innocent person being crushed by a big person again, I will not keep quiet. I will not let another person die of shame. The study was silent. The only sound was the humming of the air conditioner. Chief Maduka took a deep breath. He looked at Adanna with new respect. She was not just a maid. She was a woman of principle. I am sorry about your father, Chief said quietly. He was a man of honor, and he raised a daughter with a lion's heart. Thank you, sir. Adanna wiped her face. Go back to work, Chief said gently. And Adanna, watch your back. My wife does not like to lose. I know, sir, Adanna replied. She stood up and left the room, feeling lighter, but she knew the chief's warning was real. The storm was still gathering. Mrs. Maduka stood by the upstairs window, watching Adanna walk back to the kitchen. Her husband's warning had not scared her. It had only made her more determined. She knew that fear was a tool, and if Adanna was not afraid of losing her job, Mrs. Maduka had to find something else she was afraid of losing. She walked into her bedroom and locked the door. She moved a heavy painting on the wall to reveal a small hidden safe. She spun the dial left, right, left until it clicked open. Inside were not just jewels but files. Mrs. Maduka kept records on everyone. She pulled out the employment form Adanna had filled out just a few days ago. She looked at the surname, Okeke. She looked at the village name. Then, she picked up her phone and dialed a number. Hello, Inspector, she said, her voice smooth. Run a check for me. The name is Adanna Okeke. Her father was a driver who died about 5 years ago in Lagos. Find out the details. She waited, tapping her long nails on the mahogany table. Minutes later, the inspector called back. As Mrs. Maduka listened, a slow, wicked smile spread across her face. Accused of stealing dollars? Died in shame? Thank you, Inspector. She hung up. Now she understood. Adanna was not just being a hero. She was fighting a ghost. Mrs. Maduka looked at the file again. You want to clear your father's name? She whispered to the empty room. I will use his name to bury you. Later that evening, Adanna finished washing the dinner plates. Her back ached, but her spirit was calm after talking to Chief. She wiped her hands and walked across the compound to the boys' quarters. As she approached her room, she stopped. The door was slightly open. She knew she had locked it before leaving for the main house. Who is there? She called out. No answer. She pushed the door open and gasped. Her room had been turned upside down. Her mattress was flipped over. Her small box of clothes was emptied on the floor. Her Bible was torn, pages scattered like dry leaves. It was not a robbery. Nothing was missing. It was a message. Adanna rushed to the corner where she kept her most precious possession, a small brown envelope hidden inside her pillowcase. She grabbed the pillow. It had been slashed open with a knife. The envelope was lying on the bare floor, ripped open. Adanna fell to her knees and picked up the contents. It was an old passport photograph of her father, the only one she had. But now, someone had used a red marker to draw a big X over his face. On the back of the photo, in sharp, angry handwriting, were the words, Your father died a thief. Do you want to join him? Adanna's hands trembled violently. Tears blurred her vision. Mrs. Maduka knew. She had dug into the past and brought out the pain Adanna tried so hard to hide. Adanna held the photo to her chest and wept, but amidst the tears, a cold anger began to rise. This was no longer just about Baba Tund. This was war. Adanna did not sleep that night. She sat on her bed, clutching the defaced photo of her father, listening to the crickets outside. The anger in her chest was hot, but the air in the room was getting hotter. At first, she thought it was just the humidity. Then, the ceiling fan slowly spun to a stop. The power had gone out. This was normal in Lagos, but seconds later, a smell hit her nose. It was not the smell of a generator starting. It was the sharp, choking smell of burning rubber and wood. Adanna jumped up. She saw thick gray smoke crawling under her door like a snake. Jesus! She screamed. She grabbed her wrapper and covered her nose. She ran to the door and touched the handle. It was warm. She yanked the door open and the smoke rushed in, blinding her. The hallway of the boys' quarters was filled with black smoke. At the far end, near the exit, orange flames were licking the curtains and the old wooden cupboard where the cleaners kept brooms. Fire! Fire, oh! Adanna screamed, banging on the doors of the other staff members. Wake up! Everybody wake up! Beezy's door flew open. The girl stumbled out, coughing and crying. My eyes! I cannot see. Hold my shirt! Adanna shouted over the roar of the fire. She dragged Beezy towards Baba Tund's room. The old man was already awake but confused, coughing heavily as he tried to find his way out. Baba, let's go! Adanna grabbed his arm. The fire was spreading fast, blocking the main door. We have to use the back window in the laundry room. Run! Panic took over the quarters. The driver, the cook, and the cleaner were all scrambling, shouting prayers and calling for help. Adanna didn't let go of Baba Tund. She kicked the laundry room door open and pushed the window mesh out with all her strength. Climb! Fast! She ordered. One by one, they tumbled out onto the cool grass of the backyard, coughing and gasping for air. As Adanna climbed out last, her dress caught on a nail, tearing the hem, but she landed safely. Is everyone out? She shouted, counting heads. They were all there, covered in soot and shaking with fear. Suddenly, the floodlights of the main house turned on. The back door flew open and Chief Maduka ran out, wearing only his pajamas, his chest heaving. What happened? Is everyone okay? He shouted, running towards them. He looked at the smoke billowing from the BQ windows. Security! Get the fire extinguisher! Call the fire service! The guards ran around trying to put out the flames. Chief Maduka checked Baba Tund, who was sitting on the grass, wheezing. Thank God you are alive, Chief said, wiping sweat from his forehead. It must have been an electrical spark. It was not a spark, sir, Adanna said. Her voice was rough from the smoke, but it cut through the noise. Chief looked at her. Adanna was standing tall, pointing up at the main house. "Look," she said. Chief followed her finger. Up on the second-floor balcony, standing in the shadows, was Mrs. Maduka. She was wearing her silk nightgown, holding a glass of wine. She was not screaming. She was not calling for help. She was just watching the fire burn, calm as a statue. Adanna turned to Chief, her eyes blazing brighter than the fire. "Madam wants us dead because we know the truth. This was not an accident, sir. It was a message." Chief looked back at his wife on the balcony. For the first time, he did not look confused. He looked terrified of the woman he had married. The smell of burnt wood hung heavy over the compound the next morning. The walls of the boys' quarters were black with soot, a scar on the beautiful white mansion. Chief Maduka did not go to the office. He could not. The image of his wife standing on the balcony, sipping wine while people ran for their lives, had broken something inside him. He sat in his study, the door locked. Across from him sat Mr. Solank, the estate manager who had handled the household affairs for 15 years. "I asked you to bring the files, Solank," Chief said, his voice tired. "Every staff member who has left this house in the last 10 years. I want to know why they left." Mr. Solank looked nervous. He adjusted his glasses and placed a thick stack of folders on the mahogany desk. "Sir, you know Madam usually handles domestic staff. I just processed the final payments." "Open them," Chief ordered. They began to read. It was a horror story written in paper and ink. In 2015, a driver was fired for stealing fuel. He was arrested and spent 3 months in Kirikiri prison. In 2017, a cook was dismissed for stealing meat. She was sent away without her salary. In 2019, a nanny was accused of stealing dollars. She was beaten by the police before being released when no evidence was found. Page after page, it was the same pattern. Accusation, humiliation, dismissal without pay. And always Mrs. Maduka was the accuser. Chief Maduka slammed his fist on the desk. "It is a game to her," he whispered, his eyes wide with horror. "She destroys these people just to feel powerful. And I let it happen because I was too busy making money." "There is more, sir," Solank said quietly. "The gatekeeper before Babatund. He didn't just leave. He died in the village 2 months after Madam accused him. His family sent a letter begging for his unpaid salary to pay for his burial. Madam tore the letter. Chief felt sick. He stood up and walked to the window. Down in the courtyard, he saw Adanna sweeping away the debris from the fire. She looked tired, but she was still working. She was the only one who had dared to stop this cycle. "Leave the files, Solank," Chief said. "And do not tell my wife you were here." "Yes, sir." But Mrs. Maduka did not need to be told. From her bedroom window, she watched Mr. Solank leave. She saw the grim look on her husband's face through the glass of his study. She knew the walls were closing in. "He knows," she muttered to herself. Her hands gripped the curtain tight. "He is digging up the graves." She could not fight her husband directly. He held the money and the power. But she could remove the witness. She picked up her phone. She knew Adanna was desperate to clear her father's name. Mrs. Maduka typed a message, her fingers moving fast. "If you want to know the truth about your father and clear his name, meet me at the uncompleted building behind the estate. Come alone. 6 p.m. Or the secret dies with me." She pressed send. It was time to finish this. Adanna stood in front of the uncompleted building. It was a skeletal structure of concrete blocks and iron rods, abandoned by a developer years ago. The sun was setting, casting long, dark shadows over the rough floor. "I am here," Adanna called out. Her voice echoed against the empty walls. From behind a concrete pillar, Mrs. Maduka stepped out. She was not wearing her usual expensive lace or jewelry. She wore a simple black dress, and her face was bare. She looked dangerous. "You came," Mrs. Maduka said, smiling without warmth. "I knew you would. Poor people always run towards hope like moths to a flame." "Where is the proof?" Adanna asked, her fists clenched at her sides. You said you would clear my father's name. Mrs. Maduka laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. Your father? I don't care about your father, Adanna. I only checked his file to find your weakness. And I found it. Shame. She walked closer, her heels crunching on the gravel. You want to know why I do it? Why I ruined Babatund? Why I ruined the drivers and cooks before him? Because you are wicked, Adanna said. Because I can, Mrs. Maduka replied softly. Power is not given, Adanna. It is taken. When I married Chief, I was young. The staff tried to cheat me. They thought I was a small girl. So I taught them a lesson. I planted money in their bags. I accused them. I made sure the police beat the arrogance out of them. Adanna felt sick. You destroyed innocent lives just to feel big? I kept order, Mrs. Maduka snapped. Fear is the only language people like you understand. Look at the house now. Everyone is terrified. That is how I like it. Your father, he was just like Babatund, stubborn, claiming innocence. People like that need to be crushed so the others will fall in line. My father died because of people like you, Adanna whispered, tears stinging her eyes. And you will follow him if you are not careful, Mrs. Maduka said, her voice dropping to a hiss. I brought you here to give you a choice. Leave Lagos tonight. Go back to your village and rot. If you stay, if you try to turn my husband against me, I will plant something worse than jewelry on you. I will make sure you end up in prison for life. No one will believe a maid over a billionaire's wife. She leaned in close, her eyes wide and menacing. Do you understand me? Disappear or I will destroy you. Adanna stared at her. The fear was there, pounding in her chest, but something else was stronger. I am not going anywhere, Adanna said clearly. Mrs. Maduka's face twisted in rage. Then you have chosen your own destruction. No, madam, Adanna said, reaching into her pocket. I think you have chosen yours. Adanna pulled her phone from her pocket. The screen was glowing bright. On the display, the timer showed a call had been connected for 10 minutes. The name on the screen read, Chief Maduka. Mrs. Maduka's eyes widened. She took a step back. Who are you calling? I didn't just call him, Adanna said, her voice steady. I invited him. From the shadows behind a large concrete pillar, footsteps crunched on the gravel. Chief Maduka stepped into the fading light. He looked older than he had that morning. His shoulders slumped, not with age, but with the heavy burden of the truth he had just heard. Behind him were 2 police officers and the inspector. Maduka, Mrs. Maduka whispered. Her arrogance vanished instantly. Honey, listen. She is manipulating you. I was just... Enough, Chief Maduka roared. His voice echoed through the empty building, shaking the dust from the ceiling. I heard everything, Ivy. Every word. You admitted to framing Babatund. You admitted to ruining innocent lives just because you could. You even admitted to the fire. It was a joke, Mrs. Maduka stammered, backing away as the police moved closer. I was just trying to scare her. You are a wicked woman, Chief said softly, looking at her like a stranger. I shared my bed with a monster and I didn't even know. He nodded to the inspector. Do your job. Mrs. Ivy Maduka, the inspector said, pulling out handcuffs. You are under arrest for attempted arson, fraud, and criminal intimidation. No, you can't touch me. I am Mrs. Maduka, she screamed as the cold metal clicked around her wrists. She thrashed and cursed, but the officers dragged her towards the waiting van. Her threats faded into the night air, leaving only silence behind. 2 days later, the mansion felt different. The windows were open, letting in fresh breeze and sunlight. The heavy cloud of fear had lifted. In the living room, Babatund stood tall in a crisp new uniform. He had been promoted to head of staff security. Beezy was there too, humbled and grateful that Chief had given her a second chance to work, provided she never lied again. Adanna stood by the door with her small bag packed. You don't have to go, Chief Maduka said, handing her an envelope. This house needs someone with your conscience. I will double your salary. Adanna smiled, shaking her head. Thank you, sir. But my work here is done. I promised my father I would clear his name, and in doing so, I cleared yours too. But I cannot be a maid forever. I want to go back to school. Chief smiled proudly. Then take this. He pressed the envelope into her hands. It is a scholarship. Any university you choose, I will pay. It is the least I can do. Adanna's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, sir. She walked out of the big black gates, past Babatund, who waved with a wide grin. She stepped onto the busy Lego street, the sun warming her face. She didn't look back at the mansion. She looked forward, into a future where she would never have to be afraid again. And that's the end of today's tale. We hope it brought a smile, a thought, or a little bit of magic to your day. If you enjoyed the story, please like the video, subscribe to Tales Vibe for more weekly tales, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We love hearing from our story family all around the world. Until next time, keep your heart open, your imagination alive, and remember, laughter and lessons always go hand in hand. See you in the next story.